Welcome, astrology lovers. My name's Amanda Pua Walsh, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Astrology Hub. And today I am so thrilled to be with astrologer Arielle Guttman. Arielle's going to be talking with us about eclipses in general, but we're really going to go into the upcoming lunar and solar eclipses, August 7th and August 21st. We are going to cover the significance of these eclipses for the United States and for our current president. But most importantly, we're going to cover, she's going to share with us how she feels this eclipse is going to affect you personally and how you can shift from feeling like a victim to the circumstances or the energies of the eclipse and into an empowered place. So we're going to spend a lot of time on that. It's so awesome to be here with all of you today. Thank you so much for being here. Arielle, especially thank you for being here. Let's start with your perspective on why we need to pay attention to eclipses. There's 4 of them a year. They've been happening throughout our lives. What significance do eclipses have in general?
Okay. Well, first of all, Amanda, let me thank you for having me join you here, because you've had some amazing astrologers all summer long talking about this eclipse. I've heard most of them, not all of them, and I'm really, thrilled that you're starting this dialogue, that you're continuing this dialogue, and that people are getting engaged with eclipses. I really feel like the collective consciousness now of the country and the world is getting so much more education in astrology than they've ever had before through things like this, so that the common person that isn't really even studying it is like aware of things that they weren't before. So thank you for that. And there have been some great things. I might repeat some of the things some people said, but hopefully I'll come up with some new things. So there's an ancient idea that we inherited from the ancient sky watchers that involves a precedent of the fact that eclipses are important, especially total solar eclipses. I mean, there's lunar eclipses and solar eclipses. Some of them are annular, some of them are partial, some of them are, whatever. There's different distinctions of them, but the total solar eclipse is quite a phenomenon. The sun disappears for a couple of minutes and it's black. Day turns into night. And of course, this must have inspired fear and awe in our predecessors. So the ancient sky watchers, who did record things quite meticulously, as we have found out from the transcriptions of all these old clay tablets and so forth and documents, is that when an eclipse falls over a certain part of the country or the land, it affects both the people of the land and the leader of the land, because the leader of the land is sort of, the sun is the king. The sun has always been kind of thought of as the king. And I've done a lot of work in mythology, and the sun king and the sun as the king, tends to come out through a lot of mythologies in most cultures. So this one, because the total eclipse is happening all across, like the great 48 states, it's not hitting Hawaii in totality, but we'll get 13 of our 48 on the mainland with the totality going from Oregon to South Carolina. I'm sure your viewers know this already because so many people have talked about it.
We have new people coming in all the time, though, Arielle, so it's good.
Oh, okay. So if I repeat, it's okay.
Yeah, it's definitely okay.
Okay, and so, so what we're saying here, I think, is that the eclipse affects both the place, the country, and the people. And so then I started to wonder, well, what's the historic precedent for this? And I mean, sure, the Babylonians and the Egyptians talked about it, and the Greeks and all, and the medieval astrologers and the Hellenistic astrologers, and everybody's got, some data on this. But what in our current time, can we actually match actual events with what happened in a preceding eclipse? And so I took a little trip through the last 100 years, and it so happens that 99 years ago, in 1918, we had a total solar eclipse that almost perfectly matches this one. It came in the northwest around Washington, close to Seattle, and it came out maybe down around Florida.
Can you
And
repeat the year of
in
that, Arielle? What'd you say?
1918, it was June 8th,
1918.
1918.
Mm-hmm.
And Woodrow Wilson was president. And the US had troops committed to Europe for World War I that was happening at the time. We were, fighting a war then. The Spanish flu epidemic was that year as well here. But here's the little known fact that most people don't know. And it only came out, it wasn't known at the time. About 30 years ago, the archives of Woodrow Wilson were made public. And what they found was that in the last 2 years of his presidency, he was almost totally incapable of running, being president, of doing his daily duties and performing his functions, because his health was really impaired. His physical condition was really not good. And they kept it secret. The people around him kept it secret. His wife, Edith, pretty much ran the day-to-day operations in the White House. Okay, we didn't know about that then. Now, today, you wouldn't be able to keep something like that secret. There's too much media presence everywhere and the internet and all of that. But there's a strong relationship right there to the total solar eclipse going across America, and the president not actually, he did finish office. He served 2 terms and he did finish. He didn't die in office, but he was afflicted, what you would call afflicted, as he was not a strong leader. So now, the more recent eclipses, 1998, some of the people who have talked about the 1998 eclipse, only 25% of that eclipse affected Washington, D.C. Clinton was president then, and we know there were impeachment proceedings that were enacted or begun, but he also fully served out his term and never was impeached. But he certainly came under heavy scrutiny at the time, and you could say the leader or the king was severely wounded, if not killed, in office, but, kind of character assassination, things like that. Okay. 1991 and 1990, you're going to love this, being in Hawaii. 1990 and 1991. 91, the solar eclipse was 100% across Hawaii. 75% in 1990. So 2 years in a row, Hawaii got smacked with total solar eclipses. And in September of 92, a year later, Hurricane Iniki swept across Hawaii. And that was the largest hurricane in terms of damage in the US up to that time. And we also had Hurricane Andrew that same year. So it was a really big year for hurricanes, but Hawaii really got, and the path of the eclipse was right over Hawaii at that time. So I thought that was kind of interesting too. In 1979, here's a really interesting one. 65% of the path affected Washington, D.C. in February.
Arielle, can we just back up real quick? So
sure.
You're going through the years that have had similar eclipses to this eclipse path that's coming up in terms of totality?
I'm not looking at Saros cycles like other people have, and I'm not looking at some of the other relationships that people have had, which all work. I'm looking at the path of the eclipse. I'm just researching the idea that if the eclipse falls over the land, is the land itself vulnerable to what happens after this? Okay.
Got it. And that's a great question. It gets brought up a lot. People are really curious. Does this actually have a specific effect or impact over the states or over the places where the totality happens? So
yeah, and what we're finding, or what I'm finding, is it didn't happen immediately. And I think a couple of your other panelists have suggested that the eclipse, maybe you won't expect something to happen exactly on August 21st, but for every minute that the eclipse is in totality, you get that many months or that many years for it to play out. And now the other thing I do with the eclipses is, I've been working with astrocartography and astro mapping for a very long time. So I look at the planet lines that affect different places during eclipses. in the case of, well, I'll talk about this one in a minute because this one's kind of interesting. But if we go back to 1979 and we look at the fact that in February we had a total solar eclipse, about 65% of it, I would estimate, was over Washington, D.C. Jimmy Carter was president. He lost re-election 1 year later due to the late 1979 hostage crisis in Iran, which happened the same year as the eclipse. And so again, it wounded the leader. It made the leader ineffectual. It made the country vulnerable to attack or to, it wasn't an actual war, but it was certainly something that with the Middle East and with Iran, we have never been the same since. We have never been the same with them since 1979. When the Ayatollah Khomeini came in, a lot of people my age will remember this, maybe more. Some of the younger people won't remember, but it was a pretty intense time in the history of the U.S. Okay. Also, one more example I'll give, and then we can move on to the present. 1902.
Wait, what was that year? You cut out just a little bit.
1972 was the year Nixon was elected president. Now, he is the only 20th century president to be impeached, or the more recent in recent history. He resigned in office in disgrace. 70% of the eclipse of 1972 was over Washington, D.C. The water, and a lot of the reason claimed for his electoral victory was due to the Watergate break-in that happened that year before the election, so that they stole a lot of documents from the Democratic headquarters, and the Republicans were able to get, I don't know, didn't read all the data about Watergate, but get enough data on it that they could elect Nixon president. And the other thing about that was that in 1974 was when he actually resigned. So that was 2 years after election. But at the eclipse point, Pluto was over the U.S. Chart, was over Washington at the time. And the eclipse degree that year was 18 Cancer. Nixon's sun is 19 Capricorn. So this was the perfect storm we had for the eclipse, the place, the time, the degree, the person, and the event, all tying into his natal chart, the transit chart, the eclipse, the geodetic pattern over Washington, and the totality. Not the totality path, totality was probably over the US, but 70% covered Washington. See, even this one today isn't 100% over Washington. It's only, I would guess from looking at the map, that it's probably about 75% to 80%. I don't know if anyone else has mentioned that, how much of it is actually over.
Going to cover Washington, D.C.?
Cover Washington.
Yeah.
But
Does anyone know? If anyone knows, put it in the chat.
Yeah. Because if you all have been watching all of these and you're taking good notes, you will know this. Okay, so I was eyeballing it, and I think it looked like about 80% covering Washington. So then we have that, back to the one that I said in 1918, which was the total eclipse path, matching pretty much the one that we're having now in 2017. So that's the country, that's the precedent for, does it affect the land? Does it affect the people of the land? I think we can say yes. And of course, there's a lot more research to be done, but I think it's great now because astrologers have the tools to do it. All you need is a good research director to sit you down at a bunch of computers and put in the data and look for certain things, and we've got the answers to what we need. And I think this is where astrology is really going in the 21st century, because this is the way we legitimize, all of this stuff that we've been saying for all this time. And there really is truth to it.
Arielle, so let's just take a quick pause. So
Okay.
thank you for all of that historical background. That those are new dates and new data that we actually haven't heard before. So thank you so much. For those of you who don't know, Arielle is prolific. She's written some amazing books, and I really appreciate that about you, Arielle, bringing the research, the academic angle in, because we need it. We need the checks and balances that way. Okay, so and I wanted to just ask the audience, was that helpful for you to get the historical background on some of these other eclipses and how they've affected the land beneath them? One question that came in is about Hawaii, and as you were speaking about Hawaii, I was thinking, geez, I need to look into this. How did that hurricane affect Hawaii? I didn't live here at that point. So what was the impact for Hawaii? Do you know?
It was huge. I mean, I didn't live there at the time, but if you check around anybody that has lived there for a while or went through the early 90s in Hawaii, ask them, I'm sure they'll tell you, it was a big deal. I think it hit Kauai. I think Hawaii was the main island that really got.
Kauai. Oh, yeah. Okay. I've definitely heard stories about that because there's a lot of roosters on Kauai. And
Yes.
one of the reasons is because they were all let free during that hurricane and there hasn't been a way to really corral them back in. So there's a big rooster thing going on there. But I'll take that as homework. I will look into the effects, which islands were most affected and how that
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say. When I was in Hawaii in the early 2000s or mid 2000s, I think that I saw roosters running around in the Safeway parking lot. And I said, what this is, does this Safeway sell, live chickens or what is going on here? And they said, no, they told me that story about the hurricane and how all the roosters, and of course, going around the island, I saw them everywhere wandering around. And I thought, how cool, roosters wandering around all over the island.
It's cool. And
this is the year of the rooster, by the way.
Yes. Okay. All right. So let's talk about how, and I'm sure this is where you're going to go next, this historical data or the research that you've done. What does this help you draw conclusions for what's going to happen for us coming up?
Okay. So I think it is going to be a big deal for the country. I think there's another big thing coming, some big thing coming, and it's coming across the whole U.S. Of course, it's hitting through the heartland, and it could be just the natives being restless, or the leader with the leader not being a leader. I mean, the king being eclipsed, the sun being eclipsed, the leader is not acting like a leader. Something's happening to him. And in each of these cases I pointed out before, Clinton partially, Nixon totally, Woodrow Wilson almost totally. Those three examples of Jimmy Carter, those four past presidents had very JFK difficult.
Too, right? Wasn't there? I mean, JFK
has
a link too. So
JFK, there was an eclipse that I forgot that one.
Right before he was assassinated.
Right, exactly. There was one, so that was a big one too. Okay, so we have to look at this and we have to take this pretty seriously. If not totally wiped out, they are seriously impaired. Okay, the leader, but the nation itself. And I think this brings us to the Aquarius Leo set that we're in right now. Because right after, just recently we had the nodes going into Aquarius and Leo. And I think Aquarius in mundane astrology has always ruled the people, the voice of the people, the collective. We have an Aquarius moon in the US, and so we think of ourselves as the land that's ruled by the people, or at least the people have a voice. But honestly, I think the US has been moving further and further away from the ideas and ideals of these foundations of what this country was based on. The early founding fathers, what they said, there was supposed to be a collective where everybody had a voice, and we thought the voice of the people. This was an experiment. This was going to be something new and great. And, and I feel like we've gotten further and further from that, and the leaders of our country are getting more like a monarchy, acting like it's more like a monarchy, the Leo part, that even the senators and the congressmen and the you know, governor, everyone in politics now is being, it feels like, not everybody, there's some good people still there. And I want to give credit to the good people too that are there, but they're fighting an uphill battle. The majority of them have been bought and paid for by the power elite and by, you know, this whole idea of gold and, you know, Leo, gold, the king, you know, get rich, you know, become a politician and get rich and,
Power.
you know, power. Yeah, it really does come to that. Okay. Now, there's another thing with Trump, and I know a lot of people have talked about this, about his ascendant being at 29 Leo, 1 degree from the eclipse, and his Mars being a few degrees from that, really close. You know, that's a rising Mars, even though it's in the 12th house, we have to say. Anything within 5 degrees of the ascendant, I would even go a little further because birth times aren't always spot on. But from astrocartography, I've learned that a rising planet 6 degrees from the ascendant in the 12th house or 6 degrees past it in the first is still a very power placement in a person's chart and a person's life. They're born with that rising planet. They take it with them wherever they go, even if they're not living in that location. So his Mars was 3 degrees from the ascendant where he was born in New York City. But guess where it falls exactly in the US chart? If you take it less than if you take it to the exact point, it's Washington, D.C. Now, my teacher in astrocartography, I was trained by Jim Lewis, who was pretty much the father of modern astrocartography.
Can you just explain what astrocartography is for people that may not know?
Okay, so astro is astrology and cartography is mapping. And astrocartography is the marriage of astrology and mapping. It puts your planets on the map. And you don't have to be born there. If you want to know what's happening in London for you or in Sydney, Australia, you can just look at the map and see what was rising or culminating over that. So Jim kind of figured out how to do that with the 4 rise, the set, the culminate, and the anti-culminate points. They're like the 4 compass points, let's say, of the map. And so you would have,
if you want to know where different places are ideal for you for certain things, maybe your career, for your relationship, etc.
Exactly.
You can actually use the maps. Okay, great.
Yeah, and people come all the time. They call me all the time and go, "Where should I live?" And I'm like, "Okay, wait a minute now. All right, let's, you know." Okay, so let's look at where you started, where you are now, what's rising, what's setting. Is this planet helping you in what you want to do? Is it hurting you? Is it hindering you? Whatever. So there's a lot of that. So Mars, when Mars is overhead in a place like it is for Trump, let's say it's rising all through the Northeast for Trump. It's in Washington exactly, but it's also in New York. And so the other thing my teacher came up with, which was brilliant, Jim Lewis, was that he showed definitively in his slideshows that he was doing at the time that 7 out of 10 presidents of our modern era made war in places where their personal Mars line was overhead or rising or setting. And so he could definitively show that the countries we were having open engagements of battle with were happening while they were president. And it was mind-blowing. I mean, so we look at Mars rising for Trump in Washington. Well, who's he at war with? Everybody. You know, the media, okay, the Washington insiders, everybody, his cabinet, he can't keep people, it's Mars is kind of a belligerent aspect. It's like, especially in Leo, rising in Leo like it is, and it's in the shadow in this 12th, so he's not conscious of it. That's what I call, is the Mars rising in the 12th. It's more unconscious. It's in that shadow area where it's not as easily seen, how you're using it and how it controls you. And I think Mars really controls him. and it's belligerent. It's a bully type energy. It's aggressive. It's verbally abusive. I mean, he's been, okay, he hasn't gotten down and fought anybody physically, but it's verbally abusive, to almost every group he's talked to. Okay. So where does Mars, if you take the trajectory, which Jim used to do, of where it's rising, what's the opposite point on the world? Where is it setting? It's setting right over North Korea. So I'm more concerned about North Korea, way more than I am about Russia. I think all this stuff about Russia and Russia's much better in Trump's chart. I think all this talk about Russia is just to distract us and to be doing something else is going on here. I don't know what, but there's other things going on while we're getting whatever news we're getting. And I know that's been going on for some time, but I think even more so now. And I think that the repercussions of this, we have a childish leader in North Korea too. We have a Martian type leader there. So we've got two little boy, men boys, I think the Native American grandmothers, I heard them say that you could call him a moi, which is a boy man. He's a man, he's in a man's body, but he's a boy. Right. Okay. As far as his development. Anyway, to get back to that, I don't want to go into a whole mundane thing here because I really want to get more to the eclipse and what we can do about it. But I would say let's think about North Korea and Trump and that whole thing, and who's going to diffuse that? How is that going to be diffused? Who needs to step in, to kind of soften that? But back to the lunar and solar, the Aquarius of the people. Where is the people's voice? How are the people going to be heard? We have an August 7th eclipse right now, lunar, coming right around the corner. I would watch Europe and Asia first, because I think things are going to go a little chaotic there, because the path of the lunar eclipse, while it's not total, is over Asia and Europe. So I think maybe we need to see take a look at what's going on there and what's stirring the masses there right now. And then we will see how the solar eclipse, also is affecting our country. But the thing is, as we mentioned before, it may take a little time. I really think the most severe times for the outpouring of this eclipse is going to be, let's see, where did I write that down? Late September, then through about mid-October, October 18th through the 22nd, and then about November 19th through the 25th. And this is again based on transits over Washington, transits to the US chart, Trump, the whole geodetic map, etc. And I think it'll go on through 2018 and 19, because we have Saturn going into Capricorn, joining Pluto, which will oppose the US Sun in Cancer, and then eventually conjoin the US Pluto. So that period's going to be, like a really big transformation for the US. And I know we use the word transformation kind of in a, oh yes, we're going to transform now. But when you're in it, I've just been through 4 years of Pluto transit. So let me tell you, I'm at the other end and I'm still alive. I feel like I need a big sticker on my forehead. I survived my Pluto transits. But anyway, so it's when you're in it, it's not always a big picnic, it's not.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. So Arielle, would you say though that the biggest changes are going to happen at that collective level, or the biggest transformation is going to happen at that collective level, or are people also going to see microcosms of that within their lives?
Yes, to both. I think the people are going to be stirred up in a way that, they haven't been before. During this, this solar eclipse is opposite the US moon. Now, I know there's a new chart that surfaced for Trump, which was really an old chart that doesn't have Mars right on the ascendant there. And if that is the case, then we can forget everything I just said about North Korea and Mars over Washington for him. But the point is, I looked at that chart and I get really confused when there's too many charts of one thing, because then I can't really, you can make a case for them in both ways. But I don't believe that chart as much. Truthfully and honestly, intuitively, I don't believe that chart as much, because I do feel like this man has Mars over Washington and over the East Coast of the US, because he is stirring up so much Martian stuff. And
So,
I just think that's his chart.
Arielle, do you want to just give a little bit of background, because maybe not everybody's clued into what you're talking about in terms of a new old chart coming up as a possibility for Donald Trump?
So if your viewers tune into the Astrology Eclipse portal of the Astrology Hub, what I read the other day was that there is a new time for Trump based on an older chart that had been around a while ago. And sure enough, I opened my Solar Fire program with all the files in it, with the charts that come with it. And sure enough, there's an hour earlier, a little bit over an hour earlier, where it's still Leo rising, but it's 17 Leo rising instead of 29 Leo rising. And that puts Mars in the first, but it also puts the lunar eclipse, this lunar eclipse, exactly opposite his ascendant. So there is a case to be made for that he does stir things up. But I still believe in the other one more. I mean, so we don't know which one is correct, because this has happened with every politician lately. Barack Obama, we've had 2 charts on. Hillary Clinton, we have 3 charts on. Now we have 2 charts on Trump. When Bill Clinton was elected, that I remember everybody predicting, and finally another time surfaced right at the end, right before the election. It's nearly impossible for astrologers to do their work and do it accurately when you don't have the absolute right data to work with. And so, we need that. That's the scientific part of astrology. If we don't have that, we don't have anything. We can't just start creating things out of nothing, out of maybe, so that's another point I did want to make. But the point I want to make now, that's really, let's just follow up on the Trump and the US thing. Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that are going to be stirred up, but especially watch the path of totality. Like when we saw Hawaii being hit by Aniki right after the path of totality hit over, let's see how close it was to Kauai per se, and how many months it took after the actual eclipse. That's one good place to start. But I think the states that are getting the eclipse right in the path of totality of it might feel it a little bit more strongly. I know it's really severe in Missouri and Kansas and kind of in the heartland of the country. We've already had a lot of riots there in the last few years anyway. A lot of riots going on, racial riots, and, for good reason. Police brutality, police shootings, police are being trained more and more like the military. It's not like the serving of the people anymore as much they're against the people. They're not with the people as much as they're against the people. But this is all stuff that's going on in the U.S. that the shadow stuff that's going on, that's right in our face, really, but it's been going on in the shadows, and we kind of have to look at that. But what I notice about this eclipse, why there's such a collective level of anxiety, is think of how many people in the world have Pluto in Leo. The Pluto in Leo generation is from about the late 1930s to the late 1950s, almost 1960, really. So a good part of the baby boomer, all of the baby boomer population, and a little bit on each side of it as well. The lunar eclipse is hitting the people with middle degrees of Pluto and Leo in their chart by opposition. I'm one of those. I'm one of the ones that's getting the middle. I've got middle Pluto Leo, so I'm getting the lunar eclipse right across from Pluto. But then the people born in the mid 50s to almost about 1960 have Pluto in late in the 20s, like from 25 to 29 Leo, they're getting this eclipse right on their Pluto. And it's really funny, as I was working on this talk last week, I had 3 women in a row that I read their charts for, were asking me questions about the eclipse, and all of them had Pluto in late Leo, from 27 to 28 to 29 Leo. And I said, wow, this eclipse is hitting your Pluto. And they were like, oh no, what does that mean? And I'm like, well, Pluto, it's about empowerment or disempowerment. Okay. Yes, Pluto's about transformation and all of that, but it's really a planet of power. So are we empowered? Are we disempowered? And I think billions, millions, possibly billions of people in the world, a couple of billion anyway, 1 or 2, have this Pluto in the path of one of these 2 eclipses. And I think this Pluto, it's scary, having your own Pluto. It's not like Pluto coming to you. It's the eclipse coming to your Pluto. So there's also the difference of, this isn't Mars hitting Trump from the outside. It's something from the outside hitting his Mars. So Mars on the inside is, how do you react? So let's say you have Mars in late Leo, like Trump has. How are you going to react to this eclipse hitting you? And the first thing I want to say about that is, I want people to kind of get away from the idea that they're powerless and the planets are controlling us and that they are going to have their way with us. We can take control. Everybody by now, whether you're a beginner astrologer or advanced, pretty much knows where this eclipse is hitting you in your chart and what planet it's hitting, if it's hitting a planet at all. And if it is, take the reins, take control. I know one woman who has Saturn right in the path of the eclipse, 29 Leo, 0 Virgo, right there. And she has already told me that 3 months ago, she started a really strong, and Saturn's in her 6th house, by the way, in Leo. So 6th house, she's already changing her work habits, which seriously needed changing. And she's already changing her everyday health and dietary habits, which seriously needed changing. And I was like, congratulations, you're doing this already. You tuned in to exactly what this eclipse is hitting. Now, that doesn't mean that the eclipse will come along to her Saturn and something else, will trigger another reminder for her. But she's already on the path. She's already taking control of where it is. And she decided consciously that I'm going to work with the energies of this eclipse. Because I think eclipses are like the way they spiral up the earth and then they spiral down from the north to the South Pole and back up again. I like this giant serpent going around the earth. I kind of think when the shadow comes over the sun and it's eclipsed, it's kind of like a big wink, It's like the sun is winking at us, or the moon is coming across, and it's boom, it's hitting a little spot in your chart, and it's illuminating it or giving it some pressure, giving it some, okay, what's in the shadow with this planet? What do you want to bring out? What are you unconscious about? And for me, the shadow just means, what are you unconscious about? And what are you holding unconscious? Like, what are you not seeing because you choose not to see it and you don't want to see it?
Nice.
I love working with the shadow, just like from dream states, because the shadow comes to us in dreams so much more easily, because we can't not look. It's like we're there. we're a passive observer. Our conscious mind is shut down. We can't interfere. At least, most of us can't. Some people try to interfere with their dreams and control them. But I like the part about just, why don't you just tell me what's going on and what I'm not seeing, because I'm obviously not seeing it in the daylight and with my conscious mind. So why don't you show it to me while I'm temporarily passed out here?
So that's a question you ask yourself before you go to bed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I love to have dreams, especially dreams like that give me instruction and show me things that maybe I haven't been looking at before.
So,
And
so you're saying that essentially the empowerment comes from noticing where the pressure is going to be on a certain
yeah,
planet in your chart and using it as an opportunity to become aware of something that you might not be aware of right now, bring that into consciousness and do something about it. Is that what
right.
you're
That's
saying?
what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I want everybody to look at where it's falling. And if it's not falling within 5 or 6 degrees of a planet, look at the house that it's in. Maybe it's an aspect, but if you're using other aspects beside the conjunction, I would keep it pretty tight. Like it might be hitting your moon by a square, but don't go more than a degree or two off that square.
Okay.
um, to see, because if it's hitting your moon by a 1 degree square, the squares are more forceful and dynamic, and they kind of force their catalysts for change. And so something now out of the shadows is forcing you to respond to something in a very emotional way, and your emotional response can either help or hinder the situation. Like
Okay.
this thing on Trump's Mars, this eclipse within a couple of degrees of his Mars, how would he respond when this eclipse hits him? Is he going to be more defensive? I mean, if it's hitting your Mars, you're likely to kind of have a trigger response and shoot from the hip and say something that you may really regret later on saying to somebody that you're in an important relationship with, or that's meaningful to you in your life, and you've just said something that can't be unsaid now. And so it's good to watch in advance of this eclipse, a week or two in advance, which we're getting into right now, to see, to kind of keep ourselves. I like the idea that you're doing this meditation process, aren't you? Every day now between the lunar and the solar?
Yes, so we will be doing the global eclipse meditation starting on August 7th all the way to August 21st. Every day, a different astrologer, spiritual teacher, or meditation teacher will lead a conversation about the eclipse themes. So,
Mm-hmm.
shadow, transformation, change, embracing change, anchoring love on the planet. Um, and then we'll do 15 to 20 minutes of guided meditation. And then we will be left with a musical inspiration, which is so cool. We're having artists like coming out of the woodwork and giving us their music that is inspiring, that
Wow.
we can sit with. So it's going to be an incredible event. All of you are invited. Of course, it's free. The link for that would be in the chat. But yeah, that's the way that we're choosing to respond, is to create that space for everyone to tune into the best way for them to respond. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just, creating that place where we can come together and be conscious, as conscious as possible with the energy that's happening, and use it in an empowered way.
Okay, great. I forgot I had visuals to show in here of those
Oh,
eclipse paths, but we're already done with that conversation, so I don't know if you need.
well, maybe
Did
you can
people
post
need to
them later.
see? Yeah, I could post them. I'll
I
post
can
them on
ask.
the.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, would it be helpful to see the visuals? Everybody, please just give a yes if you think that it would be helpful to see the visuals of some of the things Arielle's talked about so far. And we'll just wait to see what everybody says about that.
Okay.
So, Arielle, we do have some questions. Can I take a few
Okay.
questions?
Sure. Of
All right.
course.
Okay. So, of course, Yolanda wants to know. She obviously knows about your background with Venus. She says, "Can you talk about Venus and her role in this eclipse?"
Yes, I wrote a little paragraph about that, but I didn't know if we were going to have time to talk about that. So thank you for asking. So the Venus star, um, it's too much to explain right now, but basically we're in a period where the Leo star is one of the 5 star points of the current transiting star of Venus. There are always 5 signs that are in the current transiting pattern of the star in any given time frame, and Leo is one of them. So all the Leos are shining brightly through Venus right now, Leo is really, activating your sign. So this eclipse is also the Leo star point was born in 1987, almost exactly 30 years from this eclipse. August 17th, 1987 was an event around the world called the Harmonic Convergence. And there were 5 or 6 planets rising in Leo that morning: the sun, the moon, Venus, the Venus star point. And that's the first Venus star point in Leo for 150 years. They run about through a sign for about 100 years. So that was born in 1987, 30 years ago in August. And this will be the anniversary, this eclipse. Now, right after that, Bill Clinton was elected, and he's a late Leo sun. And the Venus transiting star was right on his sun when he was elected and served his 8-year term. This is another thing. When the star point is on your sun, you're in the limelight. You are the king. You're the king of your world. You may not be the king of the world, but you're the king of your world. Your leadership skills are, really there. So all 5 of those star points right now, the stars, one of them is Gemini, one of them is Leo, which Trump has, quite a bit of it in his chart. But what I was going to say about the Leo star was that at the time that the Leo star came in, the Aquarius star was terminating. So the idea for 100 years before that, from about the 1890s to about the 1980s, we had the Aquarius star. And I think that was a time when America was at its best. I think that is when the Aquarius, when the ideas of the founding fathers, with the inception of the country, that we the people, were having so much influence on our government and the leaders we were electing, and calling them out and, calling them to task and making them, making them keep their promises and so forth, and that the people had more power then. And since the 80s, when the Aquarius star terminated and the Leo star was born, this is the time we've been getting further and further away from this democratic society government that we have here, and that I think we've been becoming more like a monarchy, moving more and more towards royalty. And royalty came back then. Princess Diana and the royal family came into being, into the limelight, and it was like everybody was into the monarchy again and into this royalty thing. So that, I don't know if that answers your question, but the Venus star point is not in Aquarius anymore. When it terminated, it went to Capricorn. It's kept the same point, but it just transits, it moves 1 degree through the zodiac every 8 years, or 1.5 degrees, something like that. And so, and it always goes clockwise, like the nodes. It's going against the zodiac, like the planets go, from Aries around to Pisces. Well, the star point and the nodes go like from Aries back through Pisces and all the way around. So it's going against the planets, which means, in my mind, if the nodes going backwards and the eclipses going backwards against the zodiac are more or less creating or reversing, I would say reversing, let's say, a karmic condition or a set of something that's going on with the planets. It's moving against it, so it's separating out, or it's saying, okay, this is finished. This is this is time for this to be over. And I think that's really the more important thing about the nodes, or the eclipse going against your personal planets, is that it's time. It's 18 years. Every 18 years, it comes back again, or 19 years. For the eclipses and the nodes, it's 18 to 19 years. That's a cycle. That's a full completion cycle of some kind of karmic path that you've established for your life. And when I say karma, I don't think of it as good or bad, or what you're paying or what you're reaping. It's more like conditions of your life that you're working with. It's like almost like getting a new curriculum almost. Maybe you're still studying the same subject, but you're moving on to the next level.
Okay, great. All right, so we did have several yeses for the visuals, but what I'm thinking is because we also have a few more questions and we're
Okay.
running out of time. So what I'm thinking is if we could answer a few more questions and if you could post the visuals in under the post or above the post when we're done, that would be,
Okay, I will.
yeah, because then I think everyone will get what
Okay.
they need. All right, so a couple questions about fire. And then people wondering, just because the eclipse is predominantly in fire, can we expect more fires? People are asking also about fault lines. So San Andreas, New Madrid. Do you have any insights into any of those questions?
Well, yeah, Yellowstone, New Madrid, San Andreas, all of those are close. Well, San Andreas, I don't know how close it is, but the others are. And fire, back to the Venus star point. This is a fiery year because the Venus star point is activating Aries this year since the end of March. And it's an Aries Morningstar. Some of you might have read the post on my Facebook page about Aries Morningstar. The archetype for is Wonder Woman. Meet Wonder Woman. We're in the Aries star point period. Morningstar, that's Wonder Woman.
Amazing. I'm so obsessed with that right now. I love Wonder
Yeah,
Woman.
I loved that movie. I
So
could
good.
see it 5 more
Me too. I
times.
think I will. I think I'm gonna like be hanging out in the movie theater by myself watching Wonder Woman. So amazing.
Okay, so I put my little mythological review of, how I saw that playing out, how I saw Wonder Woman being such an explosive archetype coming into the consciousness, mass consciousness right now, exploding in, we've been saying year of the feminine and all of this, but maybe it hasn't gotten off the ground in certain ways with Venus, but boy, here comes Wonder Woman, and this is influencing so many young women and older women too. I mean, when the lights went on in the theater, I'm seeing all gray-haired women in there. It's like,
well,
I'm
so
like, okay,
it's too violent to show my 8 and my 5-year-old girls. But
right,
what I
right.
did is I went on YouTube and I found some clips, especially that beginning island where the Amazons are training. I was like, I want my girls to see this, especially my daughter Sophia, who's always doing the little childhood.
Right.
Those movements, and she's doing that already naturally. So I
My
wanted them to
armband.
see it. Oh, nice. I want one like that. I wanted them to see that just so they could get into that, to have some visuals, because I didn't grow up with any visuals like that of strong, empowered, just like badass women like that.
Right,
so
right.
I think it definitely changes the way that we see ourselves when we have pictures.
But that was cool because the Wonder Woman comic book character was created in 1941 during an Aries star point period. And
Wow.
it came out this year during an Aries star point period.
Wow.
And Gal Gadot, who plays the star, the leading role, is an Aries star point.
Wow.
Individual. So
Amazing.
This is the 8-year return cycle of Venus, how this Venus cycle works. So yeah, we are in the Aries star point period right now. And so that's the fire of this year, but also there's a grand trine in fire because the eclipse and the nodes are in Leo, Uranus is in Aries, and Saturn's in Sagittarius. So that's a self-contained kind of, raging fire already that's going on. And so yeah, I think you're right. I think fire, however you see it, in the land, will buildings be burning and landscapes and forests and things like that? Most definitely, but we'll also see the fiery nature of people. And that is also rebellious and outspoken. And people, during an Aries period, they do say what's on their mind. They don't hold back.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
Okay. So another question from TE. I'm not sure if that's her or his full name, but can Arielle elaborate on the additional dates she gave for eclipse impact? So you talked about September and you talked about October. Can you elaborate on what transits that you're seeing that you think will be trigger points for this eclipse?
In my notes, I didn't actually write down that. I just wrote the dates because I was working off the screen. But it's a combination of astrocartography geodetic planets hitting Washington, and like Pluto factors, Mars factors, things like that that are going on over Washington. And Pluto, we had a Pluto Uranus square for, like 5-6 years, almost 8 years, almost through the whole Obama presidency. And that was so over Washington. That was like right over Washington. And it also affected his leadership. And I don't know that we had any eclipses per se during that period, but we definitely had it affecting the presidency. And I'm starting to wonder if we will ever again have a president that is not having such great struggles to just, like a president who's in alignment with the people and with the times, so that there aren't these struggles going on. Because I think our country for quite a few years now, and quite a few presidencies have had ineffective leadership, not as effective as it could have been, being
We
thwarted.
aren't all on the same page, so it's kind of
That's
hard for
true.
them to have
Yeah,
all the people behind them if we aren't, seeing things similarly at least. So yeah,
that's true.
yeah. Okay, so I have noticed within myself, I don't know if you all have noticed this as well, but it seems like when the new moon happened on the 23rd, it's like we're in the energy now. There's a different energy happening. I'm personally feeling very internal, like there's this like, okay, almost like a need to to make sure that all the energy there's no leaks, there's no energy leaks, there's like if I think of a canoe, there's no holes in the canoe, it's sealed up, and that energy is being harnessed in a really focused way. Maybe other people are relating, or maybe you also felt a shift on the 23rd. Maybe it's different than mine, but something is happening. I also today started to feel sort of a little bit of a low grade anxiety, and I think that this could be my own, it could be collective, it could be a combination of both. I'm wondering, we talked a little bit about how, because you hear these things, fires and fault lines and things happening to presidents and wars in North Korea. It's kind of challenging to not go to that place of feeling anxious about it all. So Arielle, I just would love to hear any more thoughts you have on how we can choose a different response, from your perspective, how we can choose or allow the anxiety and all these things to come up, and what to do with them. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
That is the best point. And that's the point I really want to leave people with. Not the ridiculous, what can happen, this can happen, that can happen, because it does make us more anxious. The reason I set down the historical precedents was just to make a point or make a case for the eclipses, do mean something. They are meaningful when they occur, and where they occur and how they occur. But in our own lives, we have enough going on not to be so tuned in to all of that all of the time. Certainly we need to support it, but not be so anxious about it. And that's why I feel like being personally empowered by this and not being a victim by where it's hitting us personally. I mean, we can notice where it's hitting us personally and take the reins and say, okay, this is hitting my this or my that. And so this is the work I need to do right now. But I think the meditation, the exercises, the breathing each day, anything to counter the anxiety, the collective fear right now, because if we're not, the one thing I was going to say about Pluto and all the people in the world that this is hitting their natal Pluto is that the one thing about Pluto is if you keep employing the old ways of trying to do something that haven't worked in the past, they're not going to work now. There's a saying like that, that the old, I forgot the exact saying, but you can't keep employing old methods to solve the problems that didn't work before. So you have to find something new. And with Pluto and with a lot of this, it's I say, what do we need to let go of collectively? Where are we constipated collectively? What do we need to eliminate? And a lot of it is collective fear and anxiety and the stories we keep telling ourselves. They're going around and around in our heads over and over again. And we wake up every day. We have, we might wake up in a really pure state from sleep, but then 5 minutes into our day, we start, buzzing with the collective energy of that. One thing I've done, and I'm not saying this is a solution for everybody, but I've been on a media fast for almost 2 months now. I am not listening. I am not watching. I am not hearing. I am not looking at this daily thing because I found that it was really upsetting me, and I didn't know what I could do about it personally. And the news still sneaks in on the computer screen.
Always.
It's like
Yes.
you can't not be a part of this world right now and not kind of hear what's going on or see something. But I don't want to be a part of every little thing that's going on, because to me it's a big reality show by the king of reality shows, and it's almost like for your entertainment or not, and it's taking us away from, I think, more important things that we could be doing. And so I think the most important thing is to if there's disasters that occur in your area, I mean, get with your local people and know how to be prepared for it. What you were saying before about you're conserving or storing up your energy right now since the Leo new moon, because maybe you feel like I don't want to just be out here, letting it out. I want to keep it in. I want to keep it in reserve so I have it when I need it.
Yeah.
Instead of expending it all before the time when I really need it is. Mm-hmm. And that's what I feel. I feel that we will all be protected, and that Jupiter is over Washington for this solar eclipse on the geodetic chart. And that is supreme protection, at least for the country. I don't think the country's going to go under it by any stretch. And besides, this is Trump's Jupiter return period. He's having he's having his own golden age, whether or not everyone else agrees with him or not. He's in his own little bubble in his own Jupiter return, thinking, he's the king and doing the right thing and saying the right thing, and that's what the people want. So I think the country is protected and will be. It's not like, but I'm just saying that to notice when you're getting a little off balance about this, it's time to turn the news off or the channels that are coming in, and just take some deep breaths and do your meditation. I start every day with a little routine, at least 5 days a week, 7 if I can, but it's a little Qigong routine, and then it's also breathing and stretching, and I finished it with the Venus Mudra. And the Venus Star Mudra is posted on YouTube on the Venus Star Rising channel, and it's also on my website, so you can do it. And it's a protective. It's putting yourself in the 5-pointed star and breathing it through all 5 points of the star in your body. It's a protective field that holds you in, but also empowers you to kind of flow with your day and not get caught up in everything that's really going on. So whatever works for you, though, really, these eclipses I think the buzz around this eclipse is bigger than any one we've had in recent years. And so people are more, maybe a little bit more freaked out about it. But we've lived through all the other ones. We've survived them, right?
Yes. Yes, we have. We're here.
We're here.
Yeah, well, and again, if you want to join us for the Global Eclipse Meditation, the registration's open now. It's free. This could be a great way to ritualize your approach to the eclipse. Every day, give yourself that 30 days to tune in, do the meditation with us, listen to the music, listen to the talk. That's one of the things I'm loving about social media. I know it can go either way, but for me, I don't even look at my news feed. I don't look at anything else. I go straight to the groups that I'm in, because those are the ones I want to be hearing from. Those, the conversations that are happening in those groups are the ones that I want to be a part of. So you can do that too. Tune in to what's happening in our conversations or other groups that do empower you and do, help you stay in in a strong place and not in a place where you feel depleted and weak after. So the other thing is next week, leading up to the lunar eclipse on August 7th, I'm going to be doing a live pretty much every day. So that'll be helping us, get into the energy even before the meditations begin on the 7th. But we'll have a lot of opportunities to hang out. If you want to, those are not all on the same time every day, just because we're working with a lot of different people's schedules. I'm going to be with Yulia Simus. Hopefully, actually, she's not 100% concerned, but from CIA. I'm going to be with Bill Duvendak, Stephanie Galing. There's going to be several amazing astrologers on next week. So if you want to get live alerts when we go live, you can click on the link in the chat. There's a link you can click on to get live alerts. It's also in the post. So yeah. Arielle, thank you so much for being here, for sharing all of your wisdom with us. Is there any, if people want to work with you, where can they go to? You mentioned your Venus Mudra on your YouTube, which is great. Where else?
There's a Venus Star Rising channel. There's a Venus Star Rising Facebook page and a Venus Star Rising website. So you can just go venusstarrising.com, Venus Star Rising YouTube, Venus Star Rising Facebook, and everything is kind of there. And I have all my archives from all the newsletters since day one at the venusstarrising.com. So if you want to do home study on the Venus Star and how it works, there's a lot of really great articles in there too.
Fantastic.
And I've been doing Venus Star presentations with the Astrology Hub now since last summer. And I've done 2 or 3 of them already. Is this my 3rd or my 4th presentation here? But I've been loving it, and I just love what you do and how you're making it available to the whole wide world. And
thank you. Yes,
thank you for you're doing your part.
It's a labor of love, that's for sure.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, Arielle, so much. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If you have questions, Arielle, are you going to be maybe in the chat answering some more questions if they come up?
Do you want me in the chat now?
Yeah,
should I go in there?
Yeah,
right
after
now?
we're done, you can, if you want to pop in and answer some more questions, that'd be great.
Sure.
All right. And thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in and for making astrology a part of your life. We will see you next week.
Thank you. Namaste.
Aloha.